So something I want to talk about for a while is the concept of gender identity. Just to clarify, I am not transgender or non-binary in any way. I was born biologically male and I identify as a man, meaning I am cisgender. But this is a very interesting topic to me and something which I don't understand why people don't get. So anyway, what is gender? Most people think it's just biological sex. But a quick search shows you that gender is actually defined as masculine and feminine identity. Now some people might think this is just a bunch of new age BS, but let me point out something to you. You probably acknowledge gender as separate from biological sex without meaning to. What do I mean by that? Well, speaking in terms of biological sex, a man is a person with a penis and a woman is a person with a vagina. But, speaking in terms of gender, a man is a masculine person and a woman is a feminine person. So, when we talk about the differences between men and women in a non-sexual context, we're talking about their gender rather than their biological sex. But let's pretend for a moment gender is the same thing as biological sex. Let's take something we might say every day. Exercising is manly! Well, what does the word manly mean if a man is just a person with a penis? Manly is having a penis, so doing exercise regularly is having a penis? What kind of sense does that make? Now let's factor in gender as separate from biological sex. In this case, a man is a masculine person, so being manly means being masculine. Doing exercise regularly is masculine. That makes much more sense! And here's something you might find interesting. Gender referred to masculine and feminine identity before it was used as a synonym for biological sex. Yeah. Originally the word gender only referred to what pronouns were used for someone, i.e. he, she, or whatever. Then, in the 1950s, psychologist and sexologist John Money came up with the definition of gender being masculine and feminine identity, and this was fully accepted in the 70s, by the 70s. It wasn't until the 80s that the word gender first started being used as a synonym for biological sex. So, for those of you who think the concept of gender being separate from biological sex is some new age mumbo jumbo, technically, the concept of gender being a synonym of biological sex is the more recent idea. That being said, men and women don't have to be entirely masculine or feminine. Like, look at me. I'm wearing jewelry and makeup, and in my Let's Play, I regularly have a pink pony on my shoulder. Now those would normally be seen as feminine qualities, but firstly, masculinity and femininity are abstract concepts. For example, my jewelry and makeup is to some degree supposed to give off a creepy vibe, which is sort of masculine, and also, not every masculine and feminine thing you do has to define you. Like, my interest in My Little Pony, I consider just an interest and not really something that defines me entirely. So, that makes the definition of being transgender quite easy. The thing that puzzles me is that there are people who say they're pro-transgender yet reject the idea of gender being separate from biological sex. Well, what do you think transgender means then? I mean, if I have to guess, they think it means someone who dresses up as the opposite gender or has had or is going to have a sex change, but no. Like I said, in terms of gender, the definition of man is a masculine person and the definition of a woman is a feminine person. So, transgenders, although they might be born biologically female, might connect more with being a masculine person. And again, just because you have masculine or feminine traits doesn't mean you have to predominantly identify with those traits. Like, Maybe some people might only justify their gender with their genitals, but it's not the same case for everyone. So anyway, if gender is based around masculinity and femininity, does that mean that there are only two genders? No. While at its core gender is based on two principles, those principles are not absolute. You may identify wholesomely with being a man or wholesomely with being a woman, but you might not feel you fit into either identity. So, you might feel like something in between, a bit of both, and yes, those two things can be seen as different, or you might feel a disconnection from either. The one thing which people who reject non-binary genders don't seem to understand is that gender isn't about identity in general, it's about masculine and feminine identity. Many of the parody genders that people who reject non-binary genders come up with involve all sorts of crazy things like identifying as mayonnaise or an angry god or an attack helicopter, but stop. Once you get into those sort of things, that's no longer about being a masculine person or a feminine person. Like I said, you can disassociate yourself from being a masculine or feminine person, but you don't add other things into the mix like culture or interests. Once you get into that territory, that's no longer gender identity, that's other things. The only argument against non-binary genders, aside from not understanding the psychological concept of gender, is that if we were to give genders to everyone based on how masculine and feminine they were, then everyone would have their own gender. Hold on a minute. Like I said, gender is an abstract concept, so it's not something that can really be measured. And because of that, gender isn't the measurement of how masculine or feminine someone is, it's how someone feels personally. Now some of you might be saying, oh, but you're just believing a bunch of mumbo-jumbo you found on the internet. Well, to that I say, at least I've read something. People who reject the notion of gender being separate from biological sex or the concept of non-binary genders haven't even looked at anything. There's lots of professional information about all this. To illustrate this point, I made this image.
How Wikipedia defines gender. What transphobes and non-binary deniers see.
Gender is biological sex, i.e. the state of being male, female.
Too long, didn't read.
But one big response I've gotten is, oh, you can put anything on Wikipedia. Well, firstly, my point isn't it's on Wikipedia, so therefore it's true. My point is, there is information out there. Some people are just too lazy to look at it. And secondly, true, you can put anything on Wikipedia, but in this day and age, if there's no credible source to it, then it's gonna be removed pretty quickly. So, I hope you've all understood what I've said, or at least tried to understand what I've said. The problem with some people is they don't even try to understand these things. But anyway, I might be doing more videos on the subject of sexuality and gender identity later. But that'll do for now. Bye bye for now.